Are people going to hate listen to this episode?
Quite possibly.
So in our world, the concept of servant leadership or selfless leadership is really big. And we've even dedicated podcast episodes to the idea that employees are increasingly seeking leaders who prioritize their well-being and reject transactional approaches. In general, we hold in high regard leaders who actively engage with their teams, rolling up their sleeves and immersing themselves in the trenches with us. But there's this really alarming trend that's coming about in the executive landscape. C-suite leaders and executives are experiencing a disturbing level of burnout. And so it makes me wonder, is there a direct connection between this burnout and the broader narrative of relational leadership? A recent Forbes article shed some light on statistics in 2022. Major corporations like Amazon, Starbucks, Pinterest, and American Airlines, they all had resignations of their CEOs. And that's a similar trend from 2021. There were notable departures from companies like Twitter and Disney. And then more recently, in an August HBR, this article reported, quote, middle managers have felt the squeeze of having to execute strategy from above while coaching and developing their teams below. Often under-resourced, they frequently roll up their sleeves to do the work alongside their teams, particularly given higher rates of turnover in the last few years. So too much work combined with too little time and resources adds up to scores of exhausted managers who are almost twice as likely to leave their employer. So that leaves me to ask, are we truly equipped to embrace selfless leadership? Can we effectively manage the personal investment required to ensure the happiness and well-being of our teams? Welcome to The Behaviorist with Work Wisdom, where we help you adopt high-performance mindsets, behaviors, communication, and culture. I'm your host, Sarah Colantonio. Our intention for the Behaviorist podcast is to share accessible, concrete practices that you can weave into your whole life to begin a shift towards joy and meaningful achievement. Today, we're turning our focus on selfless leadership, and I'm really grateful to have Kedren Crosby joining me. Hi, Kedren.
Hi. I really liked your intro. I thought it was excellent. And it was so helpful because you're bringing data, national data. Mm-hmm. There's another statistic, which is the one that came out of Deloitte about a year ago, which was that 71% of those in the C-suite are either burning out or looking to leave their jobs to go someplace where there's less stress. So you're spot on with the data. I think the other piece of this is that we see it every single day in our clients who are in the C-suite, that they are just depleted, experiencing this emotional exhaustion and this cynicism, and they can't, even the renewal cycle is not helping them.
Yeah.
So yeah, thanks for bringing this up as a topic.
Yeah, it seems like a problem. It seems like it's something that's on fire. I was wondering if you can talk a little bit more about why you think leaders are leaving.
I think I can talk about why they're leaving, and those who are staying, why they are feeling so depleted. My thoughts, whether it's because I've seen this in the literature and I'm watching trends, or I'm just listening to our clients, is it feels like we had the Great Resignation. Mm-hmm. And so 2020 was hard, and then 2021 into 2022, the Great Resignation, just so much churn. And at the time, we thought the Great Resignation was just a blip, that it was this trend that would come and go. And now we have data that proves actually it wasn't a blip. It was a shift in behavior. That's a more permanent shift in behavior. So it's not good or bad, but it certainly has implications for leadership. So the implications are, okay, so employees, the labor force, are behaving differently. They have come to terms with wanting jobs that have less stress, more flexibility, greater work-life balance. And so they are voting with their feet and going to find jobs where they can make that true, because they are interested in having whole lives that are joyful.
Yeah.
You can't blame them.
Exactly. I mean, it sounds wonderful.
It does. But it sounds like the bosses are like, well, wait a second. Who's going to do all this work now? You know? So they're the ones who are in this dilly of a pickle, right? Because there's still a lot of work to be done. But when there's more churn, as you and I know, there's so much more work. You're training new people. You're trying to find new people. The labor market's so tight right now anyhow. So they're experiencing even more stress. So it also feels like, in addition to this shift in the behavior of job seekers, we are moving towards more relational cultures, and leadership development has very much focused on whole person workplaces and relational leadership. And we focus on relational leadership. So what does it mean to use empathy and emotional intelligence, and to encourage people to bring their whole selves to work? And so we swung hard in the direction of relational leadership, because there was a lot of data coming out of the Great Resignation saying people don't want transactional workplaces. They want to go to relational workplaces. So I think leaders were trying to create fertile cultures that were relational. I also think there's this other trend, I think Brene Brown's popularity in the now corporate world is making people think that the types of cultures that they aspire to are more like family cultures. And so family cultures, using the competing values framework from University of Michigan, they are highly flexible. They're very collaborative. They're a little more slow moving. They're kind of forgiving. They can have problems with accountability. And they're more inward focused. And so I think a lot of leaders are thinking that is the right kind of culture to have. And it's not necessarily true, in my opinion. There's all kinds of cultures. And the type of culture your organization needs is really dependent on your business model, your strategy, your industry, a million things. So anyhow, there's a lot of reasons why I think we've swung to this sort of relational, the role of leader as warm, compassionate, empathetic, selfless, almost caregiver.
Yeah. And so my next question is, what do we do if nobody wants to lead? And do you think that there's a correlation between this push to being leader, caregiver, and the fact that people are just running in the other direction? I mean, we were talking to somebody just last week who they decided to sell their company for health, like mental health reasons.
That's happening everywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
The fire sales.
the fire sale. I can't do it. So what do we do if nobody wants to lead? Like, what are we going to do?
Well, I think there are answers before. Yeah, what I'm hoping is that some of the people who, certainly that we're working with are having success. They don't have to, it's not all or nothing. There's a middle way.
Yeah.
So you don't have to be totally selfless and completely depleted, and do that over and over and over until you burn out so much that you just sell your company or quit your job and go be a postal worker, or, whatever the fantasy is, not work with human beings anymore.
Yeah.
I think that there's a middle way, which is introducing, well, first of all, accepting that there isn't a sense of loyalty to organizations anymore, and that people are focused on taking care of themselves and, really trying to figure out flexibility and compensation. And so accepting that there's this new culture of work, and then saying, okay, if that is true, how is leadership different now? What does it mean to be a leader now, knowing that that's what many people want? And I think that we need to be careful as leaders about who we invest in and how much we invest in them. Yeah. And so I don't think it's a one size fits all. I pour myself unconditionally into everyone on my team. I think that the answer is assessing who is coachable, who is aligned with the future of this company, who has the technical capabilities and is a culture fit, and maybe even has the depth of character. And if you've got a win, and all of it's green, then then that might be someone that you really pour yourself into. But if it's someone who, for whatever reason, their stage of life or their capabilities or their character, you also can be transactional with that person, and you can respect them. But you don't need to make them soup when they get sick.
Okay.
Do you know what I mean? We're joking because we've done that.
But you don't have to.
I don't think you have to. I think it's wise to assess, where are the boundaries and how do I tailor who I invest in? Yeah. What does this person on my team, what do they want? And what do we want too? And then we can realign our interactions with them, based on what we learn from that. So I think this carte blanche, selfless leadership, I don't want to say anything negative about servant leadership, but I do think for some that philosophy has not served them because they often are not able to get it up into their operating efficiency zone where they are doing their highest and best work most of the time, because they're emptying the dishwasher or something that's not their highest and best work.
So what do you say to people that have embedded the selfless or servant leadership and would maybe react really strongly to that idea of operating efficiencies, like that would debate you on this?
I think that I like Adam Bryant's new book, The Leap to Leadership. Leap to Leader? I can't remember what it's called, but and one of the questions that, shifting up into higher levels of leadership, we always want to ask the question, what is best for the organization? And I think that when we are able to truly answer that question, it helps us get into what we call our operating efficiency zone, that highest and best value that we are able to contribute to the organization. And then we can really start adopting empowerment culture characteristics to clearly delegate and have others own parts of the work so that you can be in your highest and best work zone. So the leaders who have been using selfless leadership, I think part of the answer for them, at least for a lot of my clients, has been to truly understand what is best for the organization, what is my highest and best value here, how do I use clarity to delegate so that others understand what is expected of them, having high expectations, clear conversations, radical candor, keeping the psychological safety high. And that's really been part of the answer back to feeling joyful again and having a high performance team. So, but, it takes, there are a few steps in there. And the part of really assessing who on my team are those high potentials that I am going to invest myself in, and who is it okay that we work together, but I'm going to go back to the soup. I don't need to make them homemade soup on Saturday.
You said it here.
Don't have to make soup. Some people you want to make soup for, but other people you do not need to make them soup.
You don't have to. Okay. So for the leader who is maybe listening to this and is completely wiped out and frustrated, what's the first step? What's the first thing they need to do to get back to sustainability instead of quitting?
I think learning how to understand their highest and best value and be very clear about what is my highest and best value in this organization and what is that zone, and then learning how to communicate to others what their highest and best use is, and then holding them accountable, being clear with expectations, and motivating and inspiring them into that, and saying difficult things. I had a client this past week. I think that, the Great Resignation and all of the holes on our teams from not having sufficient staffing has made us more reticent to say difficult things to each other. And for God forbid someone quit, right? And so, but the reality is we need to be clear about what we expect from others, and it won't get done unless we ask people to do it.
And so some of the downsides to this kind of selfless leadership we're seeing is like compassion fatigue and overall burnout, and not having accountability and not empowering others. And so I think that piece that you're saying, which is having those hard conversations, is really key, because we see it in cultures that have high psychological safety. They have compassionate, radical candor with one another. They can give and receive feedback. And so they can get all the benefits of that. There's that comfortability, like you recognize the feedback is coming from a really good place, and it's to move everyone forward. I love that question. What's best for the organization? It's so clarifying. And I think it can help us do some hard things that we might feel awkward about initially, but I like that moving forward.
I also think another practice that can be really helpful for leaders who are feeling extremely depleted right now is to, while they're thinking about their highest and best use, truly think about work that they're doing currently that is not their highest and best use. And is that a gray zone? Is that not in anyone else's yard?
Yeah.
And so they are just picking up the pieces. So we have a practice, of course, here called yard work, which is just the simple metaphor, which is understanding what am I responsible for, and that's in my yard. And I get to plant it, and I'm responsible for weeding it. What's in your yard? What's in Matt's yard? What's in Janine's yard? What's in Allie's yard? All on and on and on. But sometimes there's that strip of grass between yards that it's like, wait a second, who's supposed to be cutting that? Nobody's cutting that.
Yeah.
So making sure that we are clearly drawing the fence around all the yards so there are not any, any bits of, grass that are 17 feet tall. And, so that is also part of the work, is making sure that there's nothing that's a gray zone, because then that will fall into the leader's yard.
Yeah. Okay.
It also takes some impulse control, because many of us who have power have a hard time with impulse control and tapping the brakes. We might do the task that belongs to someone else on the team because we think we can do it faster or we can do it better.
Yeah.
And so we have to have the impulse control to tap the brakes so that we don't do the task that's actually in somebody else's yard.
Yeah.
We don't run into somebody else's yard and start weeding. Because we don't like the way it looks. So I need to be able to say, hey, Sarah, tell me about what's going on with your yard. When are you going to get to those weeds? Because I can see them through our picket fence here. Rather than me run over there and start weeding your yard.
Yeah.
So impulse control is important in sort of climbing our way back to health. And unapologetically, with kindness, having that conversation.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Yeah, I love that. I think it takes the it reading compassionate or radical candor about having compassionate candor, and practicing impulse control. It makes me think a little bit about parenting in a way where you just do it for the kid so that it's done and it's not serving us actually, and they're not growing. And so I guess it does come down to empowerment, doesn't it?
Well, and family culture. Using the competing values framework, the role of the leader is more like a parent. And with some of my clients, I've encouraged them to think about not living into the archetype of the mother, but living into the archetype of the big sister.
Right. Because she'll tell you.
She will tell you. Stop stealing my clothes. Yeah. That's my dress.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. I love it. Well, thank you, Kedren. I'm so grateful for you for being part of this movement of helping others in the workplace enhance their individual and collective team performance. And thank you, listeners, for downloading The Behaviorist. We hope you'll subscribe. Please feel free to reach out to us through our website, workwisdomllc.com, where you can enjoy Work Wisdom Press and productions. You can always reach out and ask questions and give us suggestions of topics that you'd like us to explore in future episodes. As is our custom, I'm going to leave you with Anthony DeMello. This is actually not a quote, it's a bit of a story, but it's called Not Pushing It. And he says, all the other methods we use for self-change could be compared to pushing a car. Let's suppose you have to travel to a distant city and the car breaks down along the way. So we roll up our sleeves and we push the car and we push and push and push till we get to the distant city and we say, we made it. And then we push the car all the way to another city and you say, we got there, didn't we? But do you call this life? You know what you need? You need an expert. You need a mechanic to lift the hood and change the spark plug. Turn the ignition key and the car moves. You need the expert. You need understanding, insight, awareness. You don't need pushing. You don't need effort. That's why people are so tired, so weary. You and I were trained to be dissatisfied with ourselves. That's where the evil comes from psychologically. We're always dissatisfied. We're always discontented. We're always pushing. Go on, put out more effort, more and more effort, but there's always that conflict inside. There's very little understanding.
I was looking for a job and then I found a job, and heaven knows I'm miserable now in my life. Why do I give valuable time